Okay. Hello, all. I just wanted to take a moment tonight. I had a really interesting experience when I went to get my haircut, my nice haircut. Um, so I want to talk a little bit about who is upsetting you when you're feeling upset. But first, let's talk about what upset is. My definition of an upset. An upset, you're upset anytime, upset, disturbed, anytime you're feeling anything less than joy or peace or anything other than joy or peace. That's my definition of upset. So when I was a few years younger, I had a therapist ask me one time, excuse me, um, what are you feeling? And I just said, upset. I'm just upset. I couldn't get to any feelings, right? I just knew I wasn't happy. So we'll talk about upset. Who's upsetting you? You can decide what feelings you're feeling, but it's anything other than joy or peace. So you're not going to like this information if you don't already know it. You probably do in some way, because most of us do not like taking full responsibility or taking any responsibility for what's breaking down or going wrong in our lives. But the truth is, according to the Course of Miracles and according to um, Debbie Ford's shadow work, which is really Jungian information, Carl Jung, he's the one who coined this idea of shadow cells or the shadow part of you. The only one upsetting you is you. The only thing that can upset you is you. So a thing happens, right? A thing happens, something's happened, and you're upset about it. So what are you actually upset about? Are you upset about the thing that happened or something else? And I'm going to suggest it's something else. And what the something else is your judgment or your interpretation of that experience or that event, that thing that happened or happens or continues to happen, right? The happening itself cannot affect your state of mind, cannot affect your emotional being in any way. The truth is, according to Course of Miracles, and according to Carl Jung, you are source. There's an aspect to you that nothing can touch, nothing can harm, nothing can disturb. But most of us are operating out of our false self. Okay, the Course of Miracles calls that your ego. Carl Jung would call it your shadow self. And so, in the Jungian perspective, your shadow self is the aspect of you you've designed, what you think is your personality, it's your persona. We think that our personality, we're born with it. It just sort of is part of who we are, but we're not. 99% of your personality you invented by the time you were 6 years old. And you invented it based on this need that we have as human beings, because we are herding animals like sheep and cows and goats, right? We are meant to be in the herd, and we don't feel safe if we're not in the herd. So we don't want the herd booting us. And the herd to you as a little kid is your mother, your father, your family, right? Your friends, especially the big people around you, your caretakers. So we're constantly subconsciously constantly looking for what message is receiving and how we need to behave in order to be kept in the herd. And so through that process, we weed out, we sort out of whatever we think is not good in us or is not acceptable, is bad or wrong, and or too good to be us. Your some talents and skills you may get the message somewhere you're not that. So you'll cut all of that out and you'll sort through it. And what the tiny little bit that we're left with, the tiny little bit of qualities and ways of being that we're left with is becomes our personality. We don't realize we've invented it because, we adopt it subconsciously, and then over time we get better and better at showing up that way. And because it's subconscious, to the degree that you're not aware that it's chosen, it's operating on top of you. It has sort of control over you until you become aware. So things like the Course of Miracles, shadow work, they're all really designed to help you remember who you are, get clear about who and what you truly are, see what your false self is, or the shadow self, or the ego self, and have an option to choose differently. Now, everything out there is in you. There's a lover in you, and there's a hater in you. There's a lifesaver in you, and whether you like to admit it or not, there's a murderer in you. It's all in you because everything out there is you. According to the Course of Miracles, you're one with all of it. And most of what you're seeing is a projection of your own self judgment. The parts of yourself you've repressed, you project out there, and then we try to attack it over there because it feels better to attack it over there to attack it here. So back to what's upsetting you. So what upsets us isn't what happens. If you're in your true self, you have many more options for how to perceive what's happening around you. And you'll more than likely perceive more truly. That means you have a lot more information, a much more circumspect view of what's occurring for the people or the person in front of you, the situation. It still may not be good or not may not be what you like or want, but you won't judge it in a way that causes upset in you. And you'll actually have more power to change the situation. At the very least, change your interpretation of it and therefore change your emotional experience. But your judgments, your beliefs, which your judgments are your beliefs, interpretations, and emotional experience is actually what's generating your world. So to do this work, to really get a hold of yourself, can change everything. It can change everything. Now, I've done this work. I'm just like you. I sometimes I struggle, sometimes I forget, sometimes I remember. And when the moments that I remember and I do it differently, I choose differently, my life is different. So, what's upsetting me is what I make it mean. It's not the fact that you stepped on my toe that I'm upset about. It's the fact that I made it mean you're disrespecting me, you don't like me, you did it on purpose, you're trying to hurt me, right? That's what's upsetting me. There's a whole nother there are many interpretations to have. And there are interpretations or perceptions that are more closely aligned with the truth, right? More closely aligned with the truth. Let me manage this. And so, excuse me about that. There we go. So the truth is true whether you believe it or not. But what affects you is what you believe. You activate what you believe. So you can believe the truth. It's possible to believe what's true, and then you will activate truth in your life. But most of us are activating lies and illusions, misinterpretations, misunderstandings, misperceptions based on a past that we're remembering and projecting here in the present. And so what happened, the stepping on my foot, if I make it mean something bad or negative, I'll feel emotions that align with that, right? And I'll respond accordingly. But say I happen to notice that the guy who stepped on my foot just a moment ago was walking across the street with a cane, was tapping the ground and tapping the curb, and then he tripped up the curb and he's wearing these dark sunglasses and he's tripped onto my foot. Same experience, but a different perception or a different awareness or being aware of the more full picture, right? I now have a different understanding and I'll have a different emotional charge. Highly likely, I would recognize the guy's blind or has trouble seeing. Um, he's not doing it intentionally. And instead of feeling anger or sad or whatever, I would likely feel motivated to help, feel care, maybe even love, support, right? It's just sort of an example of how your interpreting mind decides your experience, decides your upset. And almost all experiences, it's possible to walk through it without an upset. In fact, I want to distinguish between judgment, right? When you're out there judging it, judgment carries with it a value, right? Right or wrong, good or bad, more or less. I want to distinguish that same part of your brain that judges can also be discerning, and discerning carries no value. No, value judgment is no, it's good or bad, right? It's just what is happening. I'm about to cross the street. The light just turned green, so I can walk. It says walk, but I see this Mack truck coming at 60 miles an hour. In my discernment, in my perception, this guy isn't going to be able to stop. So it's really good for me to have discernment and decide, let's not cross the road, even though the sign says I can, right? I wouldn't cross. I would wait. No judgment. I don't know why the guy's going 60 miles. How? None of my business. None of my business. All there is this is not safe for me. I'm going to wait. Truck passes. I cross the street in total peace. Now, same thing. You have some degree of discernment, but you're also judging it, meaning you're projecting on to this driver or this situation, right or wrong, good or bad, more or less. As soon as you make him bad and wrong, you're going to have emotional charge, probably anger, right? Disgust. Maybe you start shooting the guy to finger, screaming at him, right? But you're upset. It's disturbed your peace. You're no longer enjoy your peace. Completely unnecessary. In fact, you will make better decisions if you don't disturb your peace. If you just stay clear-minded. And so, one last thing I'll say before I close this, I just want to give you this to start thinking about every situation, your wife, your husband, your daughter, your son, your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, your employees, your employer, friends, whatever it is, every situation you're upset about, it's possible to choose again, to take another look at it, see what's really going on, right? To be in discernment rather than judgment, and for you to be in peace of mind. When you're in peace of mind, your whole world changes. What you attract, what you generate is completely different. Also, you will cause peace for those around you, right? It's not necessary to be upset. It's just not. And so you're the one, you decide, it's your choice. Am I going to be upset and attack, or am I going to stay in peace and just take appropriate action if there is any to take, right? And so, last thing I'll say, all judgment, according to A Course in Miracles, is self-judgment projected outward. One of the reasons I love the Course in Miracles is because there's no in between in the Course. It doesn't say sometimes or once in a while or in this situation. No, it says all judgment is self-judgment projected outward. So most of the time, you're dealing with your false self interacting with other people's false selves, and they're projecting as well. We invent the false self because we don't believe we are good. We don't believe we're okay. Some part of us got the message. We were 5 or 6 years old that there's a lot of many parts of us that are not okay. And so we're trying to hide that, suppress it, put out an image, our false self, our winning formula, as some might call it, and hiding the other. But what happens in that process is the parts that we're hiding, it's very uncomfortable to keep them in there. We project them out over there, and then we have an upset with it over there. We attack it over there. What you need to do in every situation, every upsetting situation, is ask yourself, how is this me? What is my judgment? What am I making this mean? Right? And how's this really about me? How do I do that? Right? How do I, how am I a clumsy walker and step on people's feet? Or, you know, maybe you judge the truck driver who blew by at 60 miles an hour as being a jerk or not caring about people. That's if you get down to it and see what is the judgment that's upsetting me, then you might get to, okay, how am I a jerk? Am I ever a jerk? Right? Do I ever do things without care for others? I guarantee you the answer to that will be yes and not true. Do you do things without care for other people? Do you act out and behave in ways that are less than kind and loving? Yeah, you do, because all false selves, all egos do, because we have a lot of fear. But the judgment you put on top of that is never true. Not a jerk. A person out there who's behaving in a way that's less than kind towards you is not a bad person. They're a scared person. That's the truth. If you saw a raccoon wounded in the middle of the road, you saw it just get hit by a car, you care about animals. You're one of those guys, right? You love animals. You pull over, you run out to help the raccoon. What is it going to do? It has no clue what you're trying to do. It thinks it's vulnerable and you're coming out to get it and eat it or something, right? It's going to try to claw your eyes out. And if you ever heard a raccoon growl, they growl as loud as a bear. It's really intense. And it's going to try to attack you. But you would likely not run back to your car and get a baseball bat and whack it a few times because it insulted you or hurt your feelings. You took it personally. No, you get that this thing is afraid. It doesn't know that I don't mean it harm. I'm trying to help it, right? You would have forgiveness for it immediately, highly likely. You might think, okay, how do I help it not get harmed myself, but get some help? Or you probably run back to your car and not get the baseball bat, probably get the blanket. Run out, throw a blanket on it because if it doesn't see you, it's less likely to get upset. Wrap it up in there so it's safe, you're safe, and you bring it somewhere to get it help. We do not give the same we do not give the same level of kindness and forgiveness to our fellow human beings because humans with other people you're much more likely to project on them and attack. We don't give them the same degree of kindness and forgiveness. Very rarely actually do we do that, but you can by choice. So in any situation, even if you can't do it right in a moment, later on ask yourself, okay, what was I really upset about? What were the feelings? What were the judgments, interpretations, perceptions that I was coming up with? And then when you come up with them, you can ask, how is that really about me? Again, this isn't about taking away other people's responsibility for actions they take, right? You may still have to protect yourself against some action or, take action to take care of yourself. It's about just not judging anymore. That's all. That's it. We're all responsible for our choices. We're not relieving them of their responsibility, but you're taking your responsibility back for your experience and your upset. Okay, that's it. If you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat. I'll get to them later. I've been trying to follow the chat while I'm speaking, but I've been finding it difficult. So, um, anyway, love you all. Peace. Have a great rest of your evening. You can reach out to me, mark@markvandergag.com. You can find me there and drop your questions there as well. Or, yeah, mark@markvandergag.com. Right. All right, guys. Have a great rest of your night. Now, if I can remember how to shut this off.